I have you now.
They want to mess with my droid. They're going to pay for it.
This is the way.
You may fire when ready.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
The way you're fighting, you wouldn't have lasted long.
Hello there.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
The Dark Force has risen because we are here to talk about Dark Force Rising by Timothy Zahn this evening. There is a lot of book to talk about here. This is the sequel to the New York Times best-selling Heir to the Empire. I'm not talking about the side lists. Oh, it's the best-selling sci-fi book, so they get to put it, the New York Times bestseller on the cover. This is back in the 90s when this list meant a lot more than it does today, and this one hit the top of that list. I'm talking the real deal. And so we are super excited to dive into its sequel, Dark Force Rising. And we also are super excited to be talking about a brand new Star Wars open world game, Star Wars Outlaws. It's coming next year. You're not going to want to miss that discussion in the Holonet news. We took Star Wars Station on the road this week. Colin and I are both out of town. We're both recording this on our laptops. I'm pretty sure he's in a car. And so we are really, really excited to be bringing it to you, and never let it be said that Star Wars Station is not trying our best to make sure that you get this weekly podcast in your ears. I'm Carter. And I wouldn't keep the show going without introducing my dear co-host, the Delta Source, commander of the Dark Force, Colin Archer.
Hey, Carter. Yeah, I'm not actually rolling down the road.
Yeah, not driving in a car.
I am. It is. The internet's hooked onto my cell phone, but everything's good. It's kosher. I've done this several times. Whether you've known it or not, we've recorded remote.
Yeah, you're a veteran of the classic car record. I mean, you've perfected
I'm even doing
it.
some YouTube videos. It's worked really well. It took a minute to get set up, but yeah, don't let this be an understatement. We love talking about Star Wars so much we're willing to put our vacations on pause for a couple of hours or however long it takes to get this thing
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we love it so much.
And we got to talk Dark Force Rising. I mean, come on. Is there any better way to spend a vacation than on the Star Wars Station?
Yeah. That's a real challenge to think of. I can think of a couple of things. I play golf yesterday. But man, talk about Star Wars is right up there.
It
has
is.
to be. Especially these books, Carter. This is the second in the series. We talked about see, this is how bad my memory is. I'm going to get slapped across the face.
Heir to the Empire.
The first book
Heir
of
to
the
the Empire.
series. Heir to the Empire. Yeah.
Last week. 7 days ago.
Last week. 7 days ago. But yeah. And this one is just as good as the first one. There are so many excellent plot lines that we're going to talk about.
Yes. No, and I'm ready to hop right into it because the first chapter of the first book just takes off by hiding Mara's force sensitivity basically throughout the first book. There's little bitty hints, but the first chapter...
Yeah, she was on Mercury
exactly.
the whole time. She did.
Exactly. But the first chapter of this book just rips the Band-Aid off, full out, is like, Mara has the force, Card is suspicious of it. It doesn't explicitly say that, but you can already tell. And in a couple chapters, it does explicitly say that. And so... Right. There's a lot more going on with Mara's character in this book than there was in the first one. I think in our last podcast you had maybe mentioned that Mara in the last book kind of just exists to be the person that hates Luke Skywalker. And go ahead.
Yeah, so and it really gets into some more stuff. It develops his character a lot more and what she's capable of, and most importantly, way deep into their background of what she did for the Empire.
Yes. No, it absolutely is. It digs in way deeper to her background. It shows her relationship with the Empire, also her previous relationship with Thrawn, that is very important. I mean, this book really does explore her much deeper, and one of the things that I really appreciated from the author is I think what I've picked, and I've read these before, but every time you read them, you pick up on something else, because this wasn't something that I really realized until I was reading Dark Force Rising. And I honestly think that Timothy Zahn is taking Mara Jade's character through the 5 stages of grief throughout these 3 books. And we got her, we didn't see the denial. The denial is only talked about in the past. But we see her in the first book with anger. And in this book, the very first few chapters, it's still just anger at Luke Skywalker. But by the middle of this book, we have Mara Jade bargaining. We have her, dealing with the grief, and now she's bargaining between, she's not even loyal to the Emperor anymore. She's now more loyal to Card. And so she's like, well, I'm going to use Luke, to benefit me, and then I'll kill him. I got to get this out of the way first, but then I promise I'll kill him. And so she's already past the anger stage and into the bargaining stage of grief during this book.
Right. And gosh, just so much develops. You want to talk about some of the stuff now or later?
Yeah, keep getting into it with Mara. I think that this is a character discussion that has to happen.
Yeah. I think it really develops really what the Emperor's hand was. She knows secret passages that was known only to the Emperor and her. She knows codes built into Star Destroyers that are only known to her. What else? I mean, the knowledge is so in depth, and those are the two most prominent ones that come to mind. But it cements that she's a force unto herself, right? And what they do at rescuing Card from the ship towards the end, I mean, they're on the Chimera, and only through the help of Mara Jade and Luke Skywalker are they able to accomplish this feat. It's uncanny what she's capable of.
Yeah, she's extremely powerful in the Force. But we have those scenes above Endor where she's talking with Thrawn, and she's, moving in ways that she doesn't need to. And the Emperor's lingering presence of having been killed over that planet is still there years later, and it's still, when she receives commands through the Emperor's successor, Thrawn, she still feels compelled by the Emperor himself. And that just shows how well Zahn developed this connection between her and the Emperor, developed what the Emperor's hand means, and it's really impressive that later authors were able to take Mara Jade and form her into, Luke Skywalker's wife, Jedi Master, Ben Skywalker's mother, this titanic hero figure that had such a relationship with Emperor Palpatine.
Right. And she's pursues Luke onto Jomar, right, and interacts with Sabaoth. And it's quite the interaction there too. I think she knows exactly what's up with this guy, and she knocks him out with a rock. Right?
Yes, she does. She's able to disable him, and he's dazed. It's just, I imagine it's like the stars and the ducks around his head, like when you see in a cartoon. Because that's a little more of a. Obviously, Star Wars is goofy, and there's goofy stuff in all of these. And just because these books are of supreme quality does not mean they don't have goofiness in it. And that is the one where I'm just like, this Jedi Master, lightning from his fingers, rock to the head, takes him down.
Well, but what it says to me, though, is like she has an ability to accomplish really whatever she desires, but she can sense threats, and she's willing to do, I mean, she's not devious or anything, but I'm going to say she's willing to do whatever it takes to see her mission or whatever she's trying to accomplish through, right? And like, she knows Luke cares about Sabaoth at that point and doesn't want to just straight up kill him, but so she doesn't just blast him or anything if she was even capable of it.
Right.
But, and then obviously it's a plot device just setting Sabaoth to come back later. but still, you can read into this that you talk about weapons of an uncivilized age, or what's that Han Solo quote I'm butchering again?
Yeah,
but
a
rocket's worse than that.
Right. It is worse. It's more brutal than the blaster, and Obi-Wan would certainly say it's uncivilized. But the whole plot line surrounding Mara is really deeply tied with the Saboth plot line, and so I want to take a second. Obviously, the reason we're doing this podcast, the reason we're talking about this trilogy is because of the upcoming Ahsoka show, because we really think that this trilogy is going to inform a lot of what Dave is doing with this upcoming series. And so Mara's character, many fans, myself included, are sad that we can't have, that we don't feel like we can have Mara's character in the Ahsoka show because of, it would change her character so fundamentally. Luke Skywalker obviously isn't going to be married during this timeline. And so it would essentially be a different person. But the way that they weave Mara and Jorah Saboath together here, as she could be another potential student of his, makes me feel like that perhaps Shin Hati is going to be filling some of the parts that Mara has throughout this story. And that's really because if we think that Balin Skull is going to be filling the Jorah Saboath role, then, by the way, I decided I'm just going to say his name different every time since our talk about pronunciations a week ago. So Jerus Saboti, I think that he is going to be the. I think Balin Skull is him, and I think Shin Hati may fill as much of Mara's shoes as possible in the upcoming show.
Right, that's so interesting to talk about too, because we've only heard rumors and speculation about what the origin of these characters are, like. And this takes place is she a found Padawan or found Force user that he trained? Like, was he exiled from the Jedi? What is it? What's going on? And there's going to be a lot of crossover elements here. We talked a lot about this in the last episode. Go check that out. But yeah, you're exactly right. I can't really add to that. It's going to be just so fun to figure out what the parallels are.
You're right. I'm excited to do it. And I think that the thing that they do with Mara's character in this show, what Zahn does with her in this book, is that they take her and they give her a plot line of understanding how to cope with her loss, understanding how to find purpose now that her purpose has been taken away from her. And we're also telling the story of her world being turned upside down and having nothing. But we juxtapose that with Luke Skywalker's story that we see in the first Star Wars movie in A New Hope. We see Luke, after his uncle and an uncle are killed, also have nothing. And we are now to a point where Luke has succeeded. He's killed the Emperor. He's killed Darth Vader, but he still has nothing. He doesn't have his commission in the Alliance. He doesn't know anything about being a Jedi. The only thing he has is the knowledge that he received from Ben and Yoda. And so this story, we have him exploring his relationship with the Force and exploring what it means to be a Jedi by dealing with Jorah Saboath. And this whole desire to understand the Jedi, desire to understand the code, is clouding Luke's vision. And so Zahn took a really good and really interesting direction with Luke, where in both canon and the EU, we have Luke as this Force-seeking, Jedi-seeking, explorer kind of Jedi, because he's trying to reestablish the Order. And so here, we see his first, he's so excited there's a Jedi Master that he can now learn from, and it all crumbles around him when he understands that Jorah Saboath is just not the person that he needs to be following. He may have the Force abilities, but he doesn't understand the Jedi. He is not Yoda. He is not Ben. And Luke can see right through that immediately.
There's some really cool scenes in the book where Luke is on Coruscant and researches just who is Jorah Sabaoth. And they figure out all the whole depth. He was, I forget the exact term, but the Jedi's personal equerry to Senator Palpatine or whatever it was at the time, in the long, long ago, before Emperor Palpatine.
Right.
And then he led an expedition on an extra galactic discovery mission.
Yes, the Outbound Flight Project, which there's a whole novel. There's a whole novel titled Outbound Flight about that mission.
Yeah, which I have not read, so I kind of want to read that now because it's so fun sounding. But what this history establishes is not only there's somewhat that you can glean in the sense of what the Jedi Order was capable of back before all this Clone Wars and all that. And bear in mind, the Clone Wars is just thought a few sentences throughout these books, right? It's not what we think of today. We actually don't know what it is, kind of. People are real scared of clones from these books, right? But there's it's a different Jedi Order than what we're used to. Kind of no matter how you split it, because the Empire came about. But back when Jorah Sabaoth was in the mix, they were running, man. It was a well-oiled machine, and he was in the mix of it. And this very powerful leader. And so, in my opinion, that's what you could glean from everything, was that Sabaoth is extremely powerful and capable of doing so much stuff, and a very trusted person, being the equerry to Palpatine, right? And then it even says, I think the Clone Wars happened and he just disappeared.
It does, because nobody knows what happened to him after the Outbound Flight project.
Right. That's what it is. That's exactly. And so I think Luke asked him, and he when they finally meet, and Sabaoth is like, "Oh well, I just didn't want to mess with that." To put it simply.
The other really important thing that we see from Sabaoth that you just mentioned that I want to explore is I was really surprised and impressed that when Zahn is writing, this takes place in chapter 20, Sabaoth is describing to Luke how the Jedi fell. And Luke is like, well, that doesn't really match up with what I know. But Sabaoth is saying things like, oh, the whole galaxy turned against them. And do you think the Emperor could have defeated them without having done that? And Luke's like, that doesn't really match anything that I said. Well, I was so surprised with how much Sabaoth's remarks matched what happened in the prequels, matched Order 66, matched Palpatine didn't rise to power just through tyranny. He didn't do just some military coup. I mean, he won the PR battle. In the first years of the military, a lot of people are supporting it. I mean, you see the Senate cheer and scream because they believe that there was a Jedi coup. And so getting to see Sabaoth describe that was really interesting, knowing that, that's still years on the horizon before that comes. I think it's a decade from when the book was written that would come to fruition on the screen. No, it's more than that. It's a little more than that.
Yeah. Yep. Very cool concepts. Another thing, as far as Force user goes and Luke's place in the galaxy at this point in time, the only other Force users he's aware of are dead, right? And we talked about this in the last episode. And I think he had just had heard that a Jedi Master was on Joe Mark in the last book. In this book, it's like I think you already said it, Carter. It's like this wonderment of, oh, there's another Jedi out there. And then he's got this establishment of what the historical record says, like I just talked about. And then so he gets there to meet Sabaoth, and this dude is in stark contrast, but he's like skirting on the edges, right? And so I don't think we talked about it, but in the first book there was a scene where some commoners, for lack of a better term, appealed to Luke as a Jedi. They didn't care about him that he was standing there until they meant something. He was an arbitrator over a dispute, and I think he decided that fairly. So in this book, Luke meets Sabaoth, and they go to arbitrate whatever dispute there is, and Sabaoth is extremely heavy-handed in what he does. And so it's not, like you can look at Darth Vader's actions and Palpatine's actions, right? And they're overtly evil. This guy's like, you got a little huge, Luke especially has a real huge question mark. We as the reader know exactly what's going on. But to see it kind of live it through Luke's eyes, it's like, hey man, Luke's like, what in the world is going on? He's excited to have a potential master. But he's also like, this is kind of weird.
Well, the thing about you mentioned Luke arbitrating the decision before he met Sabaoth, and I want to talk about that for a second because Luke's struggle with the peacekeeping and law enforcement aspect of the Jedi is something that is a really important exploration of Luke's character because that is obviously something that he couldn't have learned from Ben or Yoda. I mean, Luke even mentions it, that basically the only time he even sees Jedi peacekeeping applied, and I want to use the term peacekeeping really loosely, is when he watches Ben cut Ponda Baba's arm off in Chillum's Cantina in A New Hope. And Luke sees this, and, obviously he knows that Ben, that was a last resort, and that he disarmed him. He didn't kill him, even though he easily could have done that. But that...
Disarmed
him. Pun intended. But the reason that Luke doesn't have a firm grasp on the peacekeeping law enforcement aspect of the Jedi is because it's totally foreign to him, because there are no Jedi to teach him that. And so when he goes to Sabaoth and he sees his arbitration, Luke is obviously conflicted because he has no map to go on. He never saw Yoda or Ben do any arbitration. And so when this happens, he really only has what Sabaoth is saying to go on. And they get into a really, really, honestly, a kind of deep discussion surrounding the ethics of Saboth prying into those people's minds to get the truth, to make justice. And Saboth says, well, I'm doing it to help them. Is it wrong to help them? Is it wrong to explore their minds if it's in pursuit of justice? And this is, this book was written in the early 90s, but that's like the exact same conversation surrounding things like the War on Terror and the Patriot Act and things like that. And so it's making this political commentary that hadn't even really applied to society yet, that I was very surprised with how deep that book got right there.
Yeah, and it's even worse than that when you get right down to it, and just goes into like how evil the dark side can be, especially in contrast to the light. Because another thing that happened with Mara Jade, she gets into a certain vicinity of Sabaoth and starts feeling hazy, and she's like, and that's not even the right term for it. I forget exactly how the book describes it, but she's like, has a weight that about her that she didn't have. And so this is something that Sabaoth is actively doing to anybody that comes in his sphere of influence. And because even when Mara and Luke leave Sabaoth's vicinity, he feels the weight lift off of him. And so that's what also gives Luke's realization after he leaves. It's like, hey, this guy is not on the up and up. That he's actively, what's the right term, like putting this damper on everything, and it's to disarm people like emotionally and make them more susceptible to his will, so he can probably read into their mind easier, right? And so Luke has no concept of these things, not only from his morals and values, but what, like, the Jedi aren't going to teach these things at all. And so what Luke has had the lack of training, or the best training he could get at the time, it seemingly didn't mention this stuff, or some sort of like protection aura to guard against it. It's fun how he discovers, and he does it with Mara's help the whole time, which you can see this strengthening of their relationship as these books progress. And it's so fun. It's so enjoyable.
Well, and I think that what goes deeper through this is that Zahn does a super good job of introducing these new force powers, or these force powers that you couldn't have, that were happening on screen in the original trilogy, but that are unexplainable, right? Like Palpatine's, the way he made people around him feel, the way that he, bolstered the Empire around him, or the way that he psychologically hurt people, his enemies around him, just purely by existing, just by exuding this dark energy. And writing things like that really helps us understand more how the Force works, and Zahn does this in really natural, organic ways. It's like in the Phantom Menace, when it debuted and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan used Force speed for the first time, obviously a lot of fans were like, what the heck? Why are they using this? We've never seen this power before. And it happened in the sequels again when Kylo Ren stops the blaster bolt with the Force. And people are like, we didn't see these before. This doesn't make any sense, blah, blah, blah. Well, Zahn takes moments from the original trilogy and expands them with Force powers and makes it more, I don't want to say more believable, because I'm fine. I'm fine with all of the Force powers that have been introduced in any of the movies and TV shows. I don't have a problem with any of them. They're all part of the Force. But when you take this novel of when it was written, Zahn's able to expand Force powers that were happening in the original trilogy, but that weren't on screen, in a really organic way. He does such a good job of building on that.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see how, if any of this crosses over with Baylan Skoll, like some of these concepts in a sense of new Force powers, like you just said, but this kind of unknown relationship of, like, because it's Ahsoka Tano, and Luke Skywalker's out there, but he's doing his own thing, right? He's not going to be the focal point of the show. He could be in it. Hey, that'd be really cool. But maybe there's going to be some sort of, like I said earlier, why did you leave the Jedi Order? What are you doing now? What motivates you? How did this Padawan come to be? And I'm you're going to hear me break the record, but I'm excited for this.
Yeah. No, I am too. And I think that they're going to deepen the Force a lot in that Ahsoka show, and I hope that we get to see some of those things talked about and explained. And I think that Baylan Skoll would be a good vehicle for it. There's two other like long running plot lines through this that have nothing really to do with Luke and Mara and Saboth. And so we'll tackle them both. The first one I want to talk about is the political, what's going on in the New Republic, because I think that this one is probably going to translate to the Ahsoka show maybe not one for one, because there might be different situations and different problems and yada yada, but the translation of there being New Republic political drama and of there being instability with the New Republic, I bet is clear just because we see Genevieve O'Reilly's Mon Mothma on screen, and then we see the other senators that she's with talking to Hera, and Hera is still involved in the New Republic government. And so there's all these elements for the tension that we see in Dark Force Rising being brought to the Ahsoka screen.
Yeah. You could say that Hera, I think her role is like the leader of the military and would be in Akbar's place in this, right? So I really want to see, like you said it exactly, and this whole plot line has to do with in relation to the Empire, and this is after Sluis Van, right? And so they know the Empire's not some casual threat, because the Empire's attacking worlds and taking them over, and that's what the first book was, to establish that, right? And then so now, like we said last week, it's a boxing match, and the Empire's on its back foot a little bit, but not at this point. They know that the Empire means business. So there's a lot going on, and there's two factions that's really fun to display. And it's basically Leia and Akbar's faction contrasted against the Bothan Falia. And he is a huge buckhead.
Yeah. But he's a great character.
If you take your personal dislike for the stuff, he's an extremely great character. He makes for because when we're watching these movies and we're reading these books and we're doing all this stuff, we care so much about these characters that we kind of like automatically assume they're just right and are pure as the wind-driven snow, and which they are, literally. But that would make for a boring story if they just ran roughshod over everything and didn't face any roadblocks. Falia is that roadblock, and he's a fantastic one. He's the ultimate opportunist. He's the ultimate thorn in people's side. He challenges everything that everybody says, and I think he's overtly self-serving, but he's able to spin it. It's for the betterment of the New Republic, and it's really, all these interactions are so fun.
Yeah, no, they really are, because Falia embodies. And, you don't have to work in politics. You don't have to work in government. You don't have to work in an area where you know someone like Falia, because everybody's got Falia at their workplace. No matter where you are, this guy who's just, really trying to get the promotion, really trying to move along, just trying to get everyone in the office to like him and listen to what he has to say. Han even says that's what the Bothans care about. They don't care about power. They care about the number of people who value what they say. And that's like their entire driving culture. And everybody knows people like that in their own office. And so that's what makes Falia such a good character, is you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly who this guy is, right from the very beginning when he's described. And so you had said that Hera could fill the role of Akbar in Ahsoka. And I think that's really, really true. Not completely, insofar as I don't think Hera is going to be in jail the whole show. But I do think that there's some real potential there to accuse Hera of treason, like Akbar has been accused of, and get her on the outs with the New Republic, and get her as kind of a lone operator. Because really, you have to wonder, how does this general of the New Republic military at the time get and move to Ahsoka and be on Ahsoka's team and go on this adventure with Ahsoka without having her New Republic responsibilities, right? And also having seen that Mon Mothma has a plan to demilitarize the New Republic, and that we are firmly moving in that direction. We've already seen that in The Mandalorian, and so continuing to move in that direction with Genevieve O'Reilly's character. And I bet that things that happen in Andor Season 2 will inform us of her decision to demilitarize even more. It's really exciting to get to see Genevieve O'Reilly, who was Mon Mothma in a deleted scene in Revenge of the Sith, that is able to move from, if you count that deleted scene, which is canon as far as I'm concerned, if you count that deleted scene, you get a character that was in Revenge of the Sith, in a TV show before the original trilogy, in 2 TV shows, in the original trilogy, and in a basically sequels era one, because Ahsoka takes place after the original trilogy. So you were able to tie all of these products together, or all of these properties together, and all these individual Star Wars projects by tracing a line through Mon Mothma's character development and seeing her as a senator live through the Empire. Watching that Revenge of the Sith deleted scene, I think, is extremely important for Star Wars fans. Go watch it. It's on YouTube, and it really, just the one scene is going to inform you on why Mon Mothma moves to the demilitarization she does during the New Republic. And so, obviously that's different than the New Republic in the EU, but the plot lines can still mold there, where maybe Mon Mothma has some elements of Thalia, and we have Hera get introduced as the Akbar here. And we can't forget that Akbar still exists in the canon timeline at this time too, so he can fill what roles we need as well. Because in this book, they use Akbar's absence on the battlefield as kind of holding up a mirror to Thrawn, being like, Akbar is an extremely tactful admiral. He's a great admiral. He's well respected. He's really good military strategist. Thrawn is just like a notch above, and Akbar not being on the battlefield just makes it to where Thrawn can steamroll the New Republic.
Yeah, it gives our heroes huge pause, and they're having to scramble, right? Because Akbar can't help them, and they're being shackled by Thalia the whole time. And so what's the main goal of this whole plot line? And it's what the book is titled Dark Force Rising. And the whole gamut of what this is, I mean, because you pick up the book, you don't know what it is. And it can, like so much stuff, it's a double entendre, right? Mm-hmm. Not only is it Sabaoth, or triple entendre, not only is it Thrawn, it's a literal dark force. And so it's named after the fleet of 200 ships that went rogue. And when I read this or listened to it in the audiobook, it sounded scary. I know. Man.
It was such a good description.
Yeah. So 2 things happened. And it kind of builds off the last book. And it talked about the recall device that Lando told Luke about. And it builds on that 200 years in the past, 50 years in the past. What was it?
Yeah, it was 50. It was 50 years.
Okay. 50 years in the past, the Republic built a whole fleet of ships that were controlled by slave circuits. And so from a command center of one ship called the Katana could control all of the ships. Well, at the time a virus came about, what was the name of this virus?
I do not remember the name of the virus, no.
But, well, it basically took over people's minds, and it had a really cool name for it. I need to go back and look it up. But it took over people's minds, and they engaged this slave circuit to hyperspace jump with no destination. So the whole force disappeared. So now the story has this Indiana Jones-esque element of it, with this long lost, long forgotten mythical thing that would be worth in universe trillions and trillions of credits, assumably, to whoever wants it. And so now the role that it plays in this book is, Thrawn was thwarted at Sluis Van, and he needs more ships. The Republic is thirsty for more firepower because Thrawn is not pulling his punches. And Talon Card is in the mix, wanting to make a buck off of whoever can buy the things, because there's another real small side character who I want to talk about at the appropriate time. What's his name? He smokes the cigar. He's in the 3rd book a bunch. Has a silver.
Yeah. Yes, I do remember who you're talking about, but I cannot think of it off the top of my head. It starts with an F. Is Niles? Not Niles. Yeah, Niles Ferrier. Right. The reason he has a funny name is because it reminds you of Niles from that old sitcom in the 90s, from Frasier. It reminds you of Frasier. Niles Ferrier, Niles Frasier, come on.
Yeah. I was going to say shoe and horses, but do you. But anyway, what do you have to say about the Dark Force, Carter? I'm sure you have some insights that are deeper than mine.
Well, thanks. But my main insight about the plot line is that it was so interesting that this political New Republic tension was a Lando and Han plot line. It wasn't a Leia plot line, right? Like that's the obvious. You fit that character into the plot line because Leia's the one amidst the politics. And the way they remove her from this is really, really cool. And it leaves Han left to fill her shoes and getting to see the way that Han has to navigate politics. And Thalia even roasts him at one point and tells him that he should stick to smuggling and not try to understand politics. But seeing Han and Lando, who, through their lives have done a form of politics in how they do business in the underworld, and Lando especially being Baron Administrator of Cloud City would be familiar with things like this, they're able to use their techniques and their tact to navigate through conversations. And most of the Lando Han stuff until the end of the book is, it's not blasting, it's not shoot 'em up. That's more Leia and Luke's role in this book. Lando and Han are doing a lot of talking and a lot of smooth talking, and it gets us in a really fun position with those two characters in getting to see them as their swaggering, charismatic selves, that you get to see that on screen and you never question it on screen, but it's the way they carry themselves. And so in the book, getting to explore it deeper through conversation is really fun. And so I really liked the way that they did those with those characters.
Yeah. And so I can't add anything to that. I said my piece, and you brought up Leia. What is she doing this whole time? I love this.
I'm sure that you love this plot line, and what the sad thing is this plot line is probably the least likely to be able to translate to Ahsoka. Like Ahsoka, the Dark Force, the Katana fleet, it could show up, maybe not by the same name, but the concept of a missing fleet out there in the galaxy that Thrawn is able to harness in a, cloak and dagger attack against the New Republic. Like that just sounds like it might be too easy of a plot line to write, because that just seems like that's the most likely, and usually the most likely thing doesn't end up happening. But the Leia plot line surrounding the Nogri, it is much harder to navigate because you deal a lot with her heritage with Vader. And you deal with this species of new species that would be introduced, that was introduced in Rebels, and the main Nogri, Rook, who everybody knows, was already killed off. And so reintroducing them into the story will be difficult without Rook, and that's why I don't think it's going to happen. But you're right, it's such an interesting plot line, because Leia goes to the Nogri's home planet to begin dealing with, Hongur, and so she goes there to begin dealing with the Nogri to try and convince them that the Empire does not have their best interest in heart, and for them to join the New Republic. And the whole time, it is tense, and she almost gets found out multiple times, and it's a lot of Leia having to use her leadership skills in combination with her Jedi skills.
Yeah. And so many fun elements happen about this, and that Leia was the only one who could go there, right? And I mean, she was the Lady Vader. I'm sitting here trying to look up the name that the Nogri called her. It's a real cool sounding thing, and it means like daughter.
Yeah,
of Vader,
they called her the
right? It's
Umariush. That's exactly what it is. That is exactly what it is.
So,
I was thinking of the name of a restaurant from where I went to college. And I was like, it's not that. I know it's not that. But it was stuck in my brain because they sound so similar. It was an Indian food place. It was delicious.
But one of the gems of Star Wars, and we're going to repeat this to our death, is creators and authors and all these people getting to make new civilizations and new races that have this whole unique culture that, for me, I'm just enthralled by it all. And like Leia's visiting like a family section of where Cabrak is from, and they have these carvings on the wall that detail like the family tree and stuff like that. And so she's able to deduce that it was like 50 years ago or something, 54 years ago, that a ship had crashed, a Republic ship had crashed, and Vader came in and was able to spin the whole thing to basically use the Nogri as commandos and whatnot. And not only that, but they promised the Empire promised they would refurbish the world with droids or something like that. But the droids were bunk. They didn't work. They even seeded the incorrect grass on
to
there
continue to poison the earth.
To keep the Nogri in servitude, essentially. And so through this huge course of events that is extremely enthralling to listen to. I mean, she goes to their ruling council, chases off a droid that's spying on them, and basically through Leia's willpower is able to convince the Nogri to join her side, to join the side of the New Republic. And it's a really, and Thrawn has no idea. That's the best part of it. And it's really a turning point for so many different things. In the next book, it plays a huge deal, which I don't want to get into now. You'll tune in next week, right? But yes, this plot line is if you had to rank them, it's probably one of the best when it gets.
Okay, so you glossed over the thing that I would say makes this plot line not as strong. Because I think it's a great plot line. I'm not trying to disagree with you. I really like most everything.
Well, I'm just forgetting it.
You
you
hit it right. You got it right, and that's the problem. Is that you said that the Republic was in engagement above this planet 50-something years ago, and that's what caused the desolation. And so that was the part that I took issue with, because during the whole first half of the book, or even longer than that, and during the whole first book, Leia is under the impression that the reason that Hongar is like this, the reason that it is desolate, is because there was a rebellion versus empire battle above the planet, and it laid waste to it. And there are long descriptions, many paragraphs, describing Leia's visceral guilt about this. And right. I thought this was a really Andor direction to take this story, in that it's talking about the horrors of the Rebel Alliance. It's talking about the morally gray aspects of the conflict and the morally gray aspects of war, like Andor is exploring. And so I really liked this. I was like, oh, this is great commentary on the Rebel Alliance's role in the galaxy. Leia feels so guilty. But then a few chapters later, actually, I think it's, about 10 chapters later, Leia is completely absolved of this because she learns that it was a Republic battle, years before the Empire existed. And I don't think that was a good device to use, because I think that Leia's guilt in that moment would be more important for her character growth than the realization that it wasn't the Rebel Alliance's fault and that the Empire was just taking advantage of the situation. Because the message that the Empire was taking advantage of the situation could have already existed prior to that, by the Empire just, getting down there even though it was their battle and blaming it on the Rebel Alliance. That is even a little more salient of a deception. And the plotline of the droids, they could have done this way faster than they are. That could still be the case. You could just say they could have done it in a couple years instead of 8 years. They could have shrunk the timeline, basically. I mean, it's not like these things are real robots. It's not like someone's going to fact check and be like, well, actually. And so I thought that weakened the plot line a little bit of that. And maybe my biggest gripe is that I wish they would have kept the morally gray Rebel Alliance as at fault aspect in that part of the story.
Yeah, you couldn't. I can't add anything to that. Thank you for that elucidation. It really is good. And so, what else is going on here in this book? We talked about the major.
We've hit pretty much everything. I think we haven't
talked the characters.
Talon Card plays a more reduced role in this book. Talon Card plays a more understated role in this book. And so he's more overtly an ally to the Rebel Alliance in this book because the Empire has treated him so poorly. He's still a businessman. He's still a ne'er-do-well, but he is there supporting the Republic a little more than he did in the first book. And, Colin, I'm reading these books, but I just want to say that I have listened to them before. And since having listened to them and now reading them, I cannot not hear Ricardo Montalban's voice when I'm reading Talon Card. Like, it's straight up, he is right. Khan from The Wrath of Khan. Talon Card sounds identical to Khan.
Yeah, he does. I haven't thought about that.
I'm surprised that hadn't crossed your mind because you're listening to him and you're such a Star Trek fan. I was like, that must have
he sounds
totally
like a swashbuckling pirate, but he's not a pirate.
He's just got that like real Spanish accent. But anyway, that's beside the point. Along the same lines of that, I wanted to mention that I had forgotten earlier. We had this discussion about the phonetic pronunciation in these Star Wars books. They used to, in a handful of old EU books, they used to print at the beginning of these books a phonetic list of the characters' names and how to say them. And this was only in a few of the books, but I wish that they would bring that back, and 2, retroactively do it in every Legends collection book to end every argument that people have ever had about the pronunciation of these names.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be really good.
I don't think there's a whole lot more for us to say on Dark Force Rising. It's a great read. Well, go ahead. You got something else to say?
So yeah, I mean, just the end of it, right? And we can't.
You're right. We gotta address the end. I was gonna glaze over that part.
So, I mean, it's kind of weird. I mentioned Indiana Jones adventure. Han and Lando are going at one angle to find where these ships could be. There's a rumor this guy at this underwater casino has some information. Niles Ferrier is looking for this guy, and he's in the service of Thrawn. And so there's a confrontation at the underwater casino. Talon Card, or what is it? Ferrier leaves with the guy who knows who's selling the ships, and Talon Card finally decides he's going to help out the Republic and let them know. And so they get Mara Jade to go with them, right? Mm-hmm. And this is a really cool Luke scene. He they come across this field of ships, and this is the middle of nowhere. There's no like hyperspace jump points. They get to the Katana. It's well preserved. And then just as they think like everything's going to be okay, the Chimera shows up. And then I think this is the wild card. Card ship shows up. It sounds really cool, the depiction of that and how it works. Mara flies her own Z-95. A really cool space battle happens here, right? Luke saves Mara Jade by seeking her out. She had to eject after crossing over into an ion beam. Han and the rest of the guys, I think with the help of R2-D2 even, figure out how to move a ship into one of Thrawn's fellow Imperial Star Destroyers, not the Chimera. Figures out how to remote control it into one of his. And there's another star or a dreadnought or something. I don't remember. Oh, we didn't even mention Bel Iblis. That's
true. That was because Bel Iblis is like at the beginning of the book, and he's a very interesting character.
He's a real.
And then boom, he's like not in it at all. And it's just they talk about, and they give him so much backstory. He's the one who established the Rebel Alliance. He has all of this beef with Mon Mothma. He doesn't trust her. And then there's just no more information.
I wonder if he's a Luthen.
God, that's a good guess.
Analog.
That's a good. They might have, Tony Gilroy and Dave sat down, read these books, and then chopped up the parts that they each got to tell. Because he would be a great Luthen analog, and that's perfect. I honestly don't. I don't think that's. I think that's probably the case. I do believe that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because Bel Iblis he has a beef with Mon Mothma.
Right.
Right. And I mean that's kind of true in this one. Mon Mothma wants to do it her way, and Bel Iblis wants to do it his way. Same with Luthen.
Yeah, so, no, you're absolutely right.
I think we came across something. I haven't heard anybody else talk about.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that either. I do think that Luthen would be a good 1-to-1 for Garm Bel Iblis. This book is truly the Empire Strikes Back of this series. I mean, it's obviously the second one, but it leaves you in a lurch. It leaves our heroes defeated, and it leaves the Empire in an extremely powerful position. Because Han even says, if they have the Dark Force, it's going to flip the balance of power in the galaxy. And so it really does leave you in a lurch like the Empire Strikes Back did.
Right. You find out at the end that Thrawn has absconded with most of the ships. And it's pretty bleak at the end. The other thing I'll say that's really good that everybody wants, we started this discussion, or a big part of this discussion was about politics and Phalia. Well, he gets his comeuppance at the very end, and it's so sweet, right? And it basically Leia And who else is there? Card or basically pulls that old trick of leaving the intercom on, and Falia tells the whole fighter group that he doesn't care about them. He cares. It's just a means to an end, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has nobody loyal to him at that point, and it's really good to see him get his whole thing done.
It's a real comeuppance, though, for the reader who, when you listen to Borsk Falia and you hear him talk, you immediately think of that meme where it's the worst guy you know. It just made an excellent point because Falia is the worst guy you know, but he becomes, as we talked about last week, he becomes the Chancellor of the New Republic. I don't know if that's his exact title, but he becomes, he is the leader of the New Republic. And it's really, really annoying because you see how he behaves in these books, and he never improves insofar as he's, again, a great character. Love getting to see how he interacts with our heroes, but he's obviously such a crappy guy. And that's all that you see throughout his entire written life is just him being awful all the time, and him ruling the New Republic, and him denying the Yuuzhan Vong crisis. And so the real mark of his character would be if we were able to see someone translate that into the Ahsoka show of this wholesale deny that the Empire is going to resurge, that the First Order is an issue, any of that. And so I'm hoping that it could honestly just be Borsk Falia, that he could fill that role after Mon Mothma passes away, as we know she does from the Bloodlines book. But we need a character like that who's so fervently going to deny this. And I think that would be really, really interesting.
So the last plot point we need to talk about that sets up the next book is it's a really cool scene. A lander from one of Thrawn's ships lands on the Katana, where our main heroes are Luke, Han, C-3PO, Lando, and they're pushed back to the bridge. There's some really cool fight scenes in the hallways and whatnot. And Luke, it's kind of brutal. Luke throws his lightsaber and penetrates the hole, and the gas escapes, the atmosphere escapes into space, and the stormtroopers in the hallway suffocate.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
And so I think they send a droid out to repair it, or I forget the exact plot point, but they go back into the hall and discover that all of the stormtroopers are clones. And so to a reader, that's like old hat for us, right? But to these guys, this is a really big deal.
Massive. And to the readers in the 90s, this is a big deal.
Yeah, to the readers in the 90s. Yeah, we've been spoiled.
Yeah, we've been thoroughly spoiled on what a clone is in the Star Wars universe. I think we've got, probably 6 months worth of spoilers if you watch it all in a row. But the important part for the readers in the 90s is you still only ever have the line from A New Hope about the Clone Wars. And so getting to see this in this book, it really sets up The Last Command in an exciting way, one that you would definitely want to read.
Yeah. So another reason why this is a big deal, and it's easy to gloss over, the book talks about the Dark Fleet. There's 200 ships, and the reason they wanted to do this slave circuit was it went from a crew of 15,000 to 2,000. And so, the heroes and all this political talk, they're talking about, oh, well, it's not going to be that big a deal if they don't have enough people to operate this many ships. They can't even fly them away, let alone operate them in a battle capacity, right? They don't have enough people. And then they discover these clones. And other stuff develops that really gets them, they're really nervous about, because now not only does Thrawn have all these ships, he's going to have the people to operate them.
Mm-hmm. He is. And that's like you said, that's the big question mark and the big terrifying aspect coming in The Last Command is how this fleet is not going to have these skeleton crews, how these are fully manned. And I mean, again, the Dark Force is just made out throughout the whole book to be so mysterious, to be so scary, that they do a really good job of paying it off at the end.
Yep, really good.
Colin, I think that wraps up our conversation around Dark Force It maybe doesn't have as many elements as I think will get introduced in the Ahsoka show, but that's only because most of the elements are obviously introduced in Heir to the Empire. And so there are some really exciting plot lines I hope that we'll see followed up on the screen coming in August.
Yep, I can't wait. We're gonna be sitting there, popcorn bowls full, edge of our seats, getting ready to make a show. I mean, we're going to be making these shows, the morning of? We're going to do the same thing with Mandalorian, you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Or doing an intro.
I don't see any reason we wouldn't. So I think that we will be doing that. And so I'm really excited to hop into it. And I'm really excited for our Ahsoka coverage coming up. Because we've got a good lead-in for that. But anyway, guys, that cuts off the meat of the episode. But we got plenty of more show right here because we are going to jump right now into the How the Force Works segment.
That's not how the Force works.
So, Colin, for our uninitiated listeners, the How the Force Works segment is a really fun Patreon exclusive segment that allows us to go in and answer a question posed by one of our Jedi Knight patrons or above. And this question is anything to do with Star Wars, Lucasfilm, whatever. And so today our question comes from Tristan. And the question is, Colin and Carter, do you think the rule of two is the best way for the Sith? Colin, do you think the rule of two is the best way for the Sith?
So, I want to say yes and no. I mean, I think the casual answer is no, because you run into, and first you have to define what the Sith is. I mean, is it Palpatine and Vader? I mean, because that's all we see, and the rest is in books. And even then, it's extended universe books, right? Or legend stuff. So, and I haven't read this. We need to circle back to this question. We're reading these Bane books, Darth Bane books.
We are currently reading the Darth Bane trilogy for our book
stuff.
club. So if you're listening to this and you want to know about the history of the Rule of Two, go check out our book club on Patreon.
Yeah. So I don't know the history of the Rule of Two. I haven't read these books. I really want to be surprised by it. But I'm perfectly happy to give my speculation. I want to circle back to this and see how I was right or wrong. But I'll do my best. Okay, so part of this book is the Sith fall into this huge trap, and it has to do with the Sith code. Peace is a lie. There is only passion. Through passion I gain strength. Through strength I gain power. Through power I gain victory. Through victory my chains are broken. The Force shall free me. Well, and in the first book, in the first half of the book anyway, that I'm through, the Bane character struggles with this because A, he came from a normal background. He's just a person. But B, this, he's kind of struggling through what this actually means. And so even the other Sith in this temple are have trouble with this because this leads to other people getting killed, other Sith. And so what I think the Rule of Two reduces down to is a continuing effort for the Sith to exist. Like, if you're going to sit there and say, through strength I gain power, through power I gain victory, well, if you've killed all your people who are going to oppose you and you've gained your victory and your chains are broken, there's no other Sith. You have to have an apprentice to have your ideals be descended upon to, right? So, it may be the only way that the Sith can exist if this Sith code is a hard written law. Am I too far off the mark? What do you
No,
think?
you're pretty much much right on the mark. I think we got to explore a small, brief history of the Sith to understand what all of this means. And so we have this. So the qualifier has to be: not all dark side users are Sith. Not all dark Jedi are Sith. Not all fallen Jedi are Sith. Many of them become. And so the Sith start out obviously as a group of dark Jedi who break from the Jedi Order. And this is all EU stuff. Well, not that part, but many of the other stuff is EU, in that the Sith Order is this wide-spanning order like the Jedi. There are many of them. Their infighting causes so much instability that Darth Bane comes and says we must do the Rule of Two to preserve what the Sith believe, to, like you said, preserve the Sith code. And then the Rule of Two works for 1,000 years. A, it works in that the Sith are never found out, and B, it realizes the Sith's ultimate goal, which is a galaxy-spanning empire, Before that, the Sith had an empire, but it was never galaxy spanning, and it was never the singular form of government in the galaxy. And so I would probably say that, yeah, the rule of two is the best for the Sith because they were able to, it was the way that they ran themselves that realized their goal. And it was the only way that they realized their goal, right? Because the Sith Eternal that Palpatine runs in the sequels, it doesn't control the galaxy at all. I mean, it is defeated as soon as it comes around. It gets defeated in a week. And so in the EU continuity, there's the concept of the one Sith after the rule of two is finished. And this is rule of the strong. And this is kind of, it kind of rubs against what the Sith are and what the Sith code is, insofar as some people would even say those aren't Sith. And so while there are many different iterations of the Sith Order, the same as there are many iterations of the Jedi Order, the rule of two is the only one that they were actually able to realize their goal of galactic dominance. And so I would say that the answer has to be yes, that is the best way for the Sith to manage their order, because that's the only one that allowed them to realize it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I hope we answered that question well enough. I mean, I
hope so. I hope that it was good. Like you said, I hope that when we're done with the Darth Bane books, you'll come back and take a look at our answer from this. Tristan, we appreciate the question. If anyone listening wants to ask us a question, go over to patreon.com/Star Wars Station and check out our tiers. Find a tier that you like. And if you're above $11.38 at the Jedi Knight tier, then you can also ask a question in the How the Force Works segment. Colin, let's hop right into our next segment because it's a doozy. There's no small news coming out this week. It's only heavy-hitting news. And so we're going to hop right into the Holonet news.
You made the Holonet.
All right, Colin. So, like I said, we got a lot of news to get through, but we're going to get into the number one piece of news that came out over the weekend. There's a lot of news that came out over the weekend. We got to talk about it all, but this part was huge because it caught everybody off guard completely. And that is, we are getting a brand new Star Wars open world game. It's called Star Wars Outlaws, and man, does it look gorgeous.
Heck yeah, it does. Oh my goodness. I've been too busy on this vacation to look at the actual gameplay, but I know you made a video about it. Can you give me a brief? What's the deal?
So we put up a video on YouTube. It's our first ever made for YouTube video on the Star Wars Station page. So everybody, please go check that out. Drop a like, drop a subscription. I go in depth on watching that gameplay trailer, 10 minutes of it, and just talking about what I think this is going to be. And so as far as gameplay goes, it's a kind of smashed together in a good way of Assassin's Creed and GTA. And Red Dead Redemption. But Red Dead Redemption is just cowboy GTA. So GTA and Assassin's Creed. Because it's some sneaking around like Assassin's Creed. Obviously, it's made by Ubisoft, so it's taking a lot from that. But you have a bounty system like you do in GTA, or a wanted system like you do. And it borrows from Fallout on the system where you have different factions that have preferences, and your decisions impact these factions. Like, you will gain standing with the Hutt Cartel, but your standing may fall with the Pike Syndicate. And the only confirmed faction that I'm aware of is the Pike Syndicate. So don't take me saying Hutt Cartel that's for sure, but I bet that's a faction. And so there's also, they take the VAT system from the Fallout games. Like, this is really, it's smashing together a bunch of single-player, open-world RPGs, best concepts, and putting it in Star Wars, which really, really excites me. Your little creature helps in a lot of ways through the gameplay, and there's a lot of different weapons and customizations for your blaster, and all of these aspects that I am really, really excited about, that I think is going to be a lot of fun. And it's an underworld-centric game. No mention of the Jedi, the Sith, lightsabers, anything.
Yeah. Man, that sounds amazing. I've played a bunch of those games. I can't believe that sounds like exactly the game we've all wanted to play for so long.
Well, really,
is it going to have a multiplayer aspect or anything?
I mean, I can't say definitively no, but I would imagine they would have already mentioned it if it were going to be the case. I think it's a single player only. I mean, it's really, I guess Red Dead did have multiplayer, so I wouldn't say that. And it could always come later, but for now, I don't believe that it's intended to be multiplayer. I think it's more like a Fallout Skyrim thing where it's the open world, but you're alone. You're the only player. And I'm not,
Okay.
I know a lot of people are clamoring for the MMORPG in Star Wars. We have SWTOR. I'm not crapping on SWTOR. It's a good game, but a lot of people want the canon one. They want a canon version, and so I know that that's dearly wanted, but regardless, just the open world aspect alone is so impressive. We've seen, I think, 5 or 6 planets already. I'm sure that this is not all of the planets because they're not going to show them all to us. And so really being able to travel seamlessly from a planet into space, into hyperspace, land on another planet, that alone will make me buy this game. I mean, it's just the open world aspect is going to be
so
perfect.
fun.
It really, really is. It's going to be a blast. And the last thing I'll say that this was not mentioned in the YouTube video because I only thought about it after the fact. And the reason I thought about it was because I was reading The Last Command and I was thinking about Borstphalia and Bothans. And so this game takes place between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And so the big events during that time period happen in the comics. It's all about Han being in Carbonite, and it has a lot to do with the underworld. And so that's obviously going to be a focal point of this game. We see Han in Carbonite, so that's going to be it. But I would say the other major event that happens during this time period that has yet to be explored in any way is the stealing of the second Death Star plans, is the Bothans, and how they bring us those Death Star plans. And so I'm excited for this game because of the time period, because I would make a bet right now on this podcast that is going to happen, that the Bothans are going to be introduced in this game, and that we might not see the Death Star plans get stolen, but that will be mentioned, and that we're going to finally get that species recanonized. Because right now, as I mentioned on a few different podcasts, we don't know what the Bothans look like. We don't know if they're a species or like an organization or what. Because the only thing we really have about Bothans anymore is the line from Return of the Jedi. And for some reason, they haven't touched Bothans since Disney acquired the company. And so I think this will finally be the place they do it.
Yeah, that's great. I guess one thing I'll mention is it's so cool that they've developed so much of this game and nobody had any idea. I mean, it looks like it's almost ready to release.
It is. Yeah, that's the exciting part.
That's a cool
this
concept.
Is the first half of 2024. We are less than a year away from playing this game. I mean, that is just an amazing. I mean, really, it's crazy. It's crazy to get to think that.
We'll have something to talk about after Skeleton Crew until Andor Season 2.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So Andor is our next topic of conversation. I'm going to say none of the news today. Thankfully, none of the news today is bad news, or none of the news today is, like, oh no. This was really interesting news. And this was about Andor Season 1, and people are reporting that Andor Season 1 had a budget of $250 million. And so this would make it the most expensive Star Wars Disney Plus show ever by quite a bit. And so I think that really translated on screen. And I think that we really got that out of Andor, out of its 12. And, it's longer than The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett and other things. So that contributes partly to the reason its budget is larger. Because to put it into perspective, The Mandalorian's first season had a $120 million budget, which would make it about $15 million per episode. And so Andor, with 12 episodes,
That's almost $32 million.
Yeah. Yeah, well, with Andor,
31.
Andor had 12 episodes, so it's 20. So it's $20 million an episode. So still more than The Mandalorian. But so the size of the show contributes a little bit to that budget, but I think we saw that budget, and it delivered. And I hope that Disney knows when they were making Andor that they were going after awards, that with the critical response it got, it was super positive. Obviously, it didn't have as many viewers, and you can blame that on whatever you want to, whether it's the character was not as appealing, or the name Andor didn't catch people, or the marketing, or whatever. Because I love Andor, and I think regardless of how many people watched it, if I was the only person who watched it in the world, it's still one of the best pieces of Star Wars ever made. And so I hope that they see that $250 million budget, and that Bob Iger sees that $250 million budget and understands that that is the kind of money you spend to get quality Star Wars, and that they are getting what they're paying. That they're getting what they're paying for in this content. And that's true no matter what. If they're going to go on the cheap on something, it's not going to be as quality as if they're going to put their money where their mouth is and spend, because then we get just something that is visually and narratively as stunning as Andor.
Andor, it won some awards, didn't it?
Yes, yeah, it won a few awards.
That really no other Star Wars has. I don't recall. I'm going to. The point I want to make is that when efforts to make these things start winning awards, it gets into some sort of upper echelon of quality or respect or something like that. What other Star Wars property has won awards like this, right? Best science fiction fantasy series and stuff, Critics' Choice Super Awards, something like that. So maybe once, I thought I won something like a Golden Globe or something.
It was nominated for a Globe, which is an amazing feat for a Star Wars, because Star Wars is not an award series. It's not something that gets nominated for awards. It's a big IP. Unless
you start spending $250 million for 12 episodes, that's going to, and then you throw Tony Gilroy in the mix, who is responsible for all these nominations in the past. I must be willing to bet that that's a factor in what they're wanting to do.
Yeah, well, it moves Star Wars into the art category, because Star Wars, Andor especially. Aspects of Star Wars are art, right? The original trilogy is art. It's a historic piece of art. It changed the film industry. It's gorgeous. Obviously it's art. The prequels are art, and the prequels are there are artful aspects. I'll say that. But you have Star Wars I don't think you could say, even as a diehard Star Wars fan, that Star Wars, the IP as a whole, is art. You've got so many cooks in the kitchen. You've got so many intersecting storylines. You've got so many variables that art isn't made by committee like Star Wars IP is. But that doesn't mean that you can't have contributions to the Star Wars universe that are art, like Andor, like the original trilogy, like Rebels. And this doesn't, just because I would say, oh, this is so artful or it's not, doesn't even speak to its quality per se. But it speaks to the way it's pioneering, the way it's delivering visually, the way it's delivering narratively. And so getting to see more and more Star Wars projects become art, getting to see more and more Star Wars projects get recognized as artistic is something that makes me really happy as a Star Wars fan. More happy than seeing, obviously I want everyone on the planet to be watching and enjoying Star Wars. And I love getting to see the millions of viewers that TV shows and movies are topping all the time. But even with a lower viewed product like Andor, it's exciting to get to see Star Wars really getting recognized as artistic TV. And I'm hoping that The Acolyte will be our next entry into that. I'm hoping that The Acolyte will take an artful direction.
Yeah, exactly right. I can't wait. It's all coming down the pipe. We're going to have so much fun.
It's going to be a blast. So the next piece of news, it's a little smaller. It's just a quote, but it got me really excited, and so we had to talk about it. James Mangold got stopped and asked a question about his upcoming Dawn of the Jedi movie. Oh, and as we're recording this, Colin, the Indiana Jones world premiere is happening. So we're recording this on June 14th, and Indiana Jones is being screened, not for the first time ever, but being screened right now. James Mangold, obviously, the leader on that, producing that, or directing that. And so there's probably going to be a lot more information about Dawn of the Jedi come out just this evening, because he's going to be answering questions on the red carpet at Indy. And so this quote was not from Indy. It was from just a couple days ago. But he said, in talking about Dawn of the Jedi, it's a 10 Commandments of the Force, an origin story of how the Force came to be known, understood, wielded, and harnessed. Dude, that just reading that gives me goosebumps. I want Ben-Hur Star Wars, and James Mangold is hyping me up big time for it.
Yeah, we mentioned the Sith Code. I wonder if there's going to be the Jedi Code. So maybe that's something what they're alluding to in this. Because, the Force, what so many of us, we've talked about this before, you think just about light side users. That's what I think of first, right? And you start to think about it a little deeper. It's also the dark side. And so you have this Jedi Code. and the Sith Code. I wonder if something like that's going to be established.
Yeah, I think it will, because we have, as we've seen, we have the Jedi Code explored early on in the Order. We have the Prime Jedi. We have all the bones here, like where we know the story is going to head. But getting to hear just as he continues to relate it to these biblical epics, and as he continues to relate it about these singular character-focused stories, and really about the focus being on the Force as a concept and its beginning, and the galaxy first understanding it, is just, I mean, you could not spell out a Star Wars movie that I would want to see more than that kind of exploration. I'm such a sucker for the Force.
Octo and Jedha.
You're right. We're for sure on Octo, and we're probably on Jedha. I know. I can't wait. It's going to be, that movie's got me really excited. And so our last piece of news, Colin, is talking about how excited we should be about this movie. Because we got 3 Star Wars movie release dates yesterday. And these release dates are shifted. They're shifted back from the originals. And that's not, I want to make it very clear. I'm not sitting here saying that this is a problem with Lucasfilm or a problem with, something wrong is going on at Lucasfilm other than the ongoing negotiations with the Writers Guild strike. These dates being moved back are a result of the Writers Guild strike. And so this isn't, I want it to be clear that these dates being moved doesn't mean that there's some kind of turmoil at Lucasfilm other than the turmoil that every studio and every person in Hollywood is experiencing right now because of the ongoing writer's strike. And however that's going to shake out, we're going to wait and see. But we have to talk about its impact on Star Wars. And its impact on Star Wars is that some dates are being moved back. And that doesn't even bother me. It honestly makes me more comfortable because it gives them more time to develop it. It gives them a little bit more breathing room. And that's really, really exciting because I want them to take their time because I want to see it done right.
Yeah, exactly right. So what are these dates here? May 22nd, 2026?
Which is
December 2026 and December 2027.
Yes, and so there's a couple things to say about the May date. The May date is really, really mind-boggling, and it makes me really nervous because it is 3 weeks after the next Avengers movie, after Avengers Endgame. Whatever that one is, it's either Kang Dynasty or the other one. But whichever one it is it's coming out 3 weeks before the Star Wars movie. And, 3 weeks is a good gap for some summer blockbusters, usually. I want Star Wars to be this big fanfare, and so I hope that is going to pan out. And also, again, as we've been saying, the date's been moved back because of the Writers Guild strike. I am comfortably Star Wars is a wintertime, a Christmas time thing. I started going to see Star Wars movies in the theaters with The Force Awakens. I might have been at Revenge of the Sith, but I was too young to remember. And so the Star Wars movies premiering in December was something that really was what I knew. And so I'm a December Star Wars person, so the May date is not super exciting for me also for that. But the other thing that makes me a little nervous here is they're premiering 2 Star Wars movies within 6 months of each other, and the last time they did that was The Last Jedi to Solo. And no matter what you think about The Last Jedi, if you love The Last Jedi, awesome. I'm very happy for you. And I'm glad that you find joy in this Star Wars movie. But no matter what your opinion is on the movie, it was a controversial movie. And that's something that everybody recognizes. And it had an impact on Solo's box office. Also, releasing 2 Star Wars movies within 6 months of each other had an impact on Solo's box office. Also, the way that Lucasfilm marketed that movie had an impact on the box office. But I don't want the fact that they were premiered so close to each other definitely did have an impact on the box office. And so having a repeat of that concerns me a lot. Makes me feel like, despite Lucasfilm always saying, we learned our lesson from Solo, we learned our lesson from The Last Jedi, we learned. Well, your words are telling me that, but your actions are saying, I don't know if you did. And so that's something that's making me a little nervous about these dates.
Any speculation on what these are?
Yeah, I would be pretty firm in saying that May 22, 2026 is the Rey movie. December 18th is the Mando movie. And I'm positive that the Mando movie is going to happen in December of one of the 2 years because Mando has consistently been released around the holidays and in winter time. I don't feel like they would change that up. And so I think the Rey movie is May. Ray May, and then it'll be the month of Ray in May. Then December 18th, 2026 is going to be the Mando movie, and then the 17th of 2027, I'm hoping is the James Mangold film, but there's a possibility it's the Taika Waititi film. Because that one hadn't been canceled. That one has been confirmed to be happening by Kennedy and by Waititi and, multiple outlets. Every time they ask him, they say, yes, it's happening. Don't worry. Obviously, that doesn't mean anything coming from Lucasfilm anymore, but seeing this, I would say that that's the most likely release, is Rey to Mando to either Dawn of the Jedi or Taika Waititi's movie.
Yep. I think I'm with you there. Maybe. See, that Taika Waititi movie, I just think they'd throw it in there when they can. I really think this is Dawn of the Force and Rey. I would think Dawn of the Force would be in May, and the Rey movie in 2026 or 20. I don't want to put anything in concrete. Your guess is as good as mine.
Sure. I understand. Don't want to be held to the audio record when in 3 years people come back and say, "Well, you guys were wrong." The other small thing that I'll mention about this means that in 2025 at Celebration in Japan, that will not be the celebration of a new Star Wars movie. Now, that's not to say that they don't release the trailer and they're not hyping that movie, because it'll be a year out from that point. So it's likely that they would do that. But it no longer is the same year, because that was the assumption, right? Was that in December of 25 that they were having this celebration in Japan. And so they'll likely, my guess, and this will be pretty cool. This will be a celebration that you're going to want to be at, that everybody listening to this is going to want to be at, because the 2026 celebration will likely take place in April of 26 in the United States. And so it's going to be the month before a brand new Star Wars movie. It's going to be a month before the first Star Wars movie in 7 years. And so it's going to be hype off the chain a month before release.
Right. And I'll say this, in the 2025, if a movie's going to come out in 2026, I'm willing to bet money they'll have a trailer or some sort of sneak preview or something.
Yeah, the big project
hopefully
for the 2025 celebration will be the 26 movie. I mean, they'll have other things, whatever TV show is going on, many other Star Wars projects are always in motion. But that one specifically, I think it'll still be hyping the 26 or the 25 movie, because the 2026 celebration happening a month before the movie, there's not going to be any more they might release a trailer of the last trailer, but the marketing is done. We know the title. We know what's going to happen in this movie as far as the loose plot lines. We'll have a bunch of media material. Action figures will be on the shelves. All of that will be out by 26. It'll likely start at Celebration Japan 25 and peak at the 2026 celebration.
Right.
And hopefully we're there for both. Hopefully we're there covering them both.
Yep.
But anyway, Colin, that wraps up our Holonet news segment. And so we just got one more segment right ahead of us. And so we're going to jump right into it. Colin, let's talk about the Star Wars moment of the week.
We would be honored if you would join us.
So I want to go first. My wife brought this to my attention yesterday. We buy, and the kids get I buy a bunch of Star Wars Legos. We buy a bunch of Legos in general. Harry Potter, architecture sets, little sets for my kids. But they get so mad at me that I don't open or play with any of my Star Wars sets. I pick up this one. It's Luke Skywalker with Leia swinging across the gap on the Death Star. I'm like, see, when Sarah bought this, it was $20, and now it's $35. So in a few years, it'll be worth $50 or $200 or something like that. And that's the lament of any Star Wars Lego collector. It's like, oh, I should have bought the Death Stars. I should have bought this. I should have bought that. So that's not happening to me. I buy some sets and play with them, but others I don't. So we've purchased enough stuff. Anything retail has a points program, and the Lego website does as well. Or if you go shop at their stores, it adds to it. And so they sent us a code to where you can make your own digital minifigure, and after a series of prompts, it creates your own minifigure inside of a Star Wars comic book. And so I opted to have a print edition, and there's a digital edition that they're I guess it's in the queue to be made or something like that. But you spend the points on this comic book and they send it to you. I'm super excited to see. I mean, because the prompts are like, what would you do in a risky situation, and list a few silly things or something like that. What is your favorite superpower? And list like invisibility or reading minds or something like that. And so, like on the cover is a minifigure Boba Fett and stuff like that. I can't wait to see with this comic book with my minifigure. And I spent a bunch of time on my minifigure making it look just like me with jeans and a beard and getting the right hair color, stuff like that. So I think it's a fun little thing. I'm going to have a comic book with my minifigure in it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Silly little thing, but that's my Star Wars
That's a good one. That's a good Star Wars moment of the week. My Star Wars moment of the week, we're talking about Star Wars' cousin. This is the month that I'm allowed to talk about Star Wars' cousin. So my Star Wars moment of the week is the Indiana Jones moment of the week. I have never seen, because it was unavailable to me growing up. I was a massive Indy fan, and I've talked about that multiple times on this podcast. Had an Indiana-themed birthday party. We'll be having an Indiana Jones-themed 25th birthday party coming up next month. But my moment of the week is directly related to a piece of Indiana Jones that I haven't been able to watch until recently, and that is I have started the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. And it is everything that you could possibly want. It feels indie. It is perfect. It's got all of these 20th century history characters in it, which is, I'm eating it right up. I love history. It's a super interesting point in history. I mean, I'm a massive Ernest Hemingway reader, and he is in the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles. And so that just put me over the moon. And he's one of, tons of massive 20th century figures that are in that show. And so I really, really have enjoyed watching it. And I've just been skipping around watching a few episodes here and there based on the description. And that's been really fun. Sean Patrick Flannery, who plays Indiana Jones, is just, he's great. It's very believable as young Indy. You feel like this is connected to the universe. There's not this big disconnect. This wasn't like a cash grab or anything like that. Like, they put work into it. They did a good job. Lucas was the executive producer on this. And so I've really, really enjoyed watching it, and I'm going to continue to enjoy watching it. And so that is my Indiana Jones moment of the week.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to check that out. I finished Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I did a rewatch in preparation for the movie coming out, and I need to watch those. I watch all the movies with my kids, and they love
That's
it.
good. I'm glad. What did your kids think of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? Because as our listeners also know, I'm not a certified hater of any Star Wars product. I find joy in all Star Wars products. I am a certified hater of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I will bash that movie at every opportunity.
Regardless of that, all the Star Wars or Indiana Jones movies do a phenomenal job of enthralling the viewer with you wanting to know what happens next, and like finding that skull, right, and what's going to happen with it, and yada yada yada. The kids were extremely curious. I mean, one thing that'll be said about that movie, the sets were extremely large at the end there, and what they were having to go through to get to that end scene, and they like that a bunch. They're scared of the ants, and a couple of the other things were obviously silly. They were real worried about the nuclear attack at the start. They don't know what nuclear weapons are. God bless them,
right? Right.
So we had to explain that. I mean, that's okay, but I haven't gone to the history of this stuff.
No, I understand. Yeah.
But it was interesting, very interesting, lots of fun. Even regardless, I mean, when's the last time you watched Crystal Skull?
Oh, I mean, just because I don't like it doesn't mean I don't watch it. I definitely hate watching it. I mean, if I'm doing an indie watch through, I'll watch Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I have to. And when I showed Cassidy the Indiana Jones movies when we first started dating, I had to watch it, obviously. So I would have had to have watched that movie within the last 3 years, and I'd be more confident in saying it was within the last 2. So I have watched it within the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think if you did some sort of like slice and dice cut without the Shia LaBeouf character, it might improve it.
Mutt Williams is not even my problem. I like Mutt. I am sad that Mutt's not going to be in the Dial of Destiny. Not because I think he's amazing, and I'm happy he's not the lead, but it makes me sad that Indy has a son, and we're probably not even getting a verbal mention of him on screen. I mean, they're really... Look, the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is a flop. As I said, I'm a certified hater of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and so the Dial of Destiny is naturally going to shy away from the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull probably even more than J.J. Abrams had prequelitis and shied away from the prequels in The Force Awakens. And so I think that they're not going to touch Kingdom of the Crystal Skull with a 10-foot pole. They're just going to pretend it never happened. There was another movie franchise that recently did that. Pirates of the Caribbean. They have 5 movies, just like Indiana Jones is about to have. You know, the first 3, well-connected, really well-received. The 4th one, total flop. I mean, it's got some good elements. I don't hate the 4th Pirates of the Caribbean movie. But they came back and did the 5th one with the old characters from the original 3, and it was like really good. It felt supernatural with the first 3, and they completely ignored the 4th. Acted like it didn't happen. Didn't say a word about it. And I'm positive that that's the direction they'll take with Dial of Destiny.
Hopefully so. Yeah. We started watching those with my kids, too. They like those.
Yeah, Pirates of the Caribbean, it's an oft-not-remembered franchise, but I would say it is most similar to Indiana Jones because it's got those historic elements and the fantasy elements, and those lines are blurred just like in Indiana Jones really well, and they're addressed really well, and the elements of the fantasy and the magic exist right alongside the gritty real world in both those franchises.
Yeah. Yep, that first Pirates of the Caribbean came out in 2003. I can't believe it's been that long. It's insane. The hype around that movie. Oh my god!
I know. I hope they're able to make another one. I hope that they'll make a 6th. And I heard Depp was going to return because Disney offered him, tons and tons of money. But we'll see if that happens.
Yeah.
But anyway, Colin, I think that is the end of our Star Wars moment of the week, and I think that's going to roll us right into our ending. So thank you, everybody, for listening to this podcast. We really appreciate your support. We really appreciate your listenership. And if you've made it this far, then we would really appreciate your continued support. If you would hop on to Apple or Spotify and leave us a 5-star review, we would be over the moon. We are soon going to reach 100 reviews across both platforms. And we're getting close to that number, so we're really, really trying to beat the bushes for that. So if you haven't reviewed us yet, but you're a long-time listener, or even you're a first-time listener, go hop on there and please leave us 5 stars. It takes a couple seconds, and it is a massive help.
Yeah, and then we got all other kinds of ways. Jump on our Instagram page, share some posts on that, get the word out. Go sign up on Patreon. We got so much to offer on that stuff. We love more questions. We like sending out stickers. We like developing little other segments like clone. What was the?
You can't forget the Patreon segment, man. It's Art Troopers.
Art Troopers. I got the art.
It's been a long vacation. You've had a couple margaritas down there on the border.
Yeah, I have. Let's see what else. Twitch. We got another game that we're going to be streaming. I got a new setup that I can actually stream some games, I think, a little better. That's on twitch.tv/station media. What else we need to cover?
As you said, everyone needs to check out the Patreon because we are about to release our next episode of the Wayward Wayfarers RPG. But this episode is going exclusive to Patreon subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed on Patreon, then you're not going to be able to listen to the Wayward Wayfarers. And I know you've been following along to the first 2 episodes, audio only on this podcast feed, but to get the video and see it happening right there on the screen, just head on over to patreon.com/Star Wars Station, subscribe at the $2 tier or above, and you're going to get that entire catalog of Wayward Wayfarers RPG episodes. And I got to say, this 3rd episode,
this one's a doozy.
It's leaving you on a cliffhanger, and it's leaving you on a exciting cliffhanger. We are, we're waiting on the edge of our seats, and we already know what happens. And so you guys have got to check it out. You guys are really going to want to see it. And so, other than that, make sure to check us out on Twitter, SW_station. We're about to hit 100 followers over there, which is cool because, Twitter is, I feel like, a difficult platform to break into and grow on. And 100 followers is not significant at all, but we're always happy that people are continually listening to our daily Star Wars thoughts. If you're on Facebook, we got a cool Facebook group, Star Wars Station Cantina. And if you're over on Discord, be sure to go to our Instagram bio, click the link, and join our Discord, because we've got always great discussions happening over there. It's a lot of fun. And that Discord is not just for Star Wars Station, but that's for all kinds of other stuff we've got going on. We've got a Marvel Instagram page, marvelcu.station. We got a Harry Potter page, hp.station. And Colin, you need to talk about your brand new Warhammer Station YouTube channel.
Yeah, so I went on this vacation. 10th edition 40K is coming out. Henry Cavill's got a lot of irons in the fire on this thing, fixing to kick it off. So I've played Warhammer since 2006. I've got a lot of experience under my belt with every aspect of the game, from playing it to making lists to the hobby side of it to the business side of it. Lots of different stuff going on over there. But there's a Warhammer Station YouTube channel. I'm going to try and upload a video every day. I've got 2 videos in the queue that I'm editing right after this recording to get one up tonight, one up tomorrow. And it's so fun making these videos. This 10th edition is going to change the face of 40K. So far, of all the reviews I've done, of all the stuff I've looked at, there's not an army in this new rules that's going to be left out in effectiveness. If you want to get the latest, greatest data and some of the, shameless plug bragging here, but some of the most insightful things you can get when it comes to Warhammer stuff that cuts through all the clutter, check out Warhammer Station. You want to be on this boat when it takes off, because we're going places.
Absolutely. It's been cool. I'm not even a Warhammer guy. I know a surface level about it, and I've enjoyed watching the videos. So you guys all need to check it out, especially if you're a Warhammer fan. But we appreciate you guys checking out everything we have. We really appreciate it. We love making content. We're going to keep making content, and we're going to keep bringing you guys Star Wars week by week, because we're having a blast doing it. So that wraps it up. Be sure to join us next week when we bring you the final book in the Heir to the Empire trilogy, The Last Command. And until then, please, 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 keep it wizard.